them all what I'm made up. Strut down the hall, won't stop till I get enough.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're tackling a really significant development. The Trump administration's move to freeze, a massive $2.2 billion in federal funding to Harvard.
That's the number, yeah. A huge sum. And Harvard didn't just accept it.
No, they sued. So you've shared some articles covering this, and our goal today really is to get under the hood, understand the core conflict, why it's happening, what's really at stake.
We're all getting lost in all the legal jargon or the political back and forth.
Exactly. We want to figure out the potential consequences. And what's striking right away, I think, is seeing an institution like Harvard push back so hard against the federal government, it feels unusual.
It really is. You don't see this kind of direct public confrontation often. Usually there's more negotiation, maybe some compromise behind the scenes. Filing a lawsuit like this, that signals a major escalation.
Okay, so let's break it down. What triggered this? What's the central conflict here?
Well, it boils down to the administration's investigation into Harvard, specifically over allegations that the university wasn't doing enough to combat anti-Semitism on campus.
Right. I saw that mentioned. This started with a letter back in late March 2025.
That's correct. A formal letter outlining those initial concerns.
And it sounds like it was more than just concerns. The articles use the phrase litany of demands. What were they asking Harvard to do?
The specifics of every single demand aren't fully detailed in what we read, but the overall picture is that the administration wanted significant changes in how Harvard handled policies, procedures, basically their whole approach to anti-Semitism incidents.
And Harvard's reaction?
Well, crucially, around mid-April, April 14th it seems, reports came out that Harvard refused to just, roll over and accept these demands. They weren't going along with it.
Okay, so refusal leads to retaliation. Was that when the funding freeze happened?
Pretty much immediately after, yes. That same Monday, April 14th, the administration's task force announced this huge freeze. The $2.2 billion in federal grants, plus another, $60 million in contracts.
And just quickly, there's a difference between grants and contracts, right?
Yeah, it's worth noting. Grants are typically the lifeblood for academic research, funding specific projects, labs, studies across all sorts of fields. Contracts are usually more about Harvard providing a specific service to the government.
So freezing both hits them broadly, affects research and other operations.
Exactly. It's a major financial hit across the board.
So Harvard gets hit with this massive freeze. Their response isn't to back down, but to double down with legal action. Tell us about the lawsuit.
Yes, just a week after the freeze announcement, on Monday, April 21st, Harvard filed suit in federal court. Their core argument, government overreach. They're saying the administration's actions violate the university's constitutional rights.
And the language from Harvard sounds pretty forceful. I saw a quote from President Alan Garber talking about severe and long-lasting consequences.
He did, and he also accused the administration of seeking, I think the phrase was, unprecedented and improper control. It really shows how seriously Harvard is taking this.
So what's the specific legal argument about the funding freeze itself?
A key part seems to be this disconnect. Harvard argues there's no rational connection between the stated concerns about anti-Semitism and freezing billions in research funding.
Right. Garber mentioned specific research areas, didn't he?
He did. Things like helping kids survive cancer, fighting infectious diseases, better pain management for soldiers, and generally maintaining America's edge in innovation.
So the argument is, what does freezing cancer research funding have to do with campus anti-Semitism policies?
Exactly. They're saying these critical research areas, vital to the public good, are being jeopardized for reasons that just don't logically connect.
And it seems they're worried this isn't the end of it. The articles mention a reasonable fear of more cuts, like this is just the beginning.
That's definitely part of their calculation, it seems. They probably view this freeze as a warning shot. If they don't fight back now, they might face even bigger cuts, maybe even total termination of funding later if they don't comply.
Okay, so this is a huge deal for Harvard. But the articles also frame this as part of something bigger, right? A broader campaign against elite higher education institutions.
Yes, that context is important. This isn't happening in a vacuum. The administration has been putting pressure on other universities, too.
Any examples? How have others responded?
Well, Columbia University, for instance, they were facing a potential loss of, I think, over $400 million. Reports suggest they made concessions, giving up some control over an academic department, expanding campus police powers, seemingly to try and unfreeze that funding.
And didn't Michigan do something, too?
Yes, the University of Michigan shut down its entire diversity, equity, and inclusion program. That was seen by many as a response to similar pressures.
So other big names have, well, maybe not caved, but definitely adjusted course under pressure, which makes Harvard's stance even more notable.
Exactly. It really highlights Harvard's resistance. One article even called it a significant snag in the administration's broader efforts.
Which brings us to the why. Why can Harvard take this stand? What makes them different?
Well, it's probably a few things, but the sources really emphasize two key factors. First, Harvard has this incredibly powerful global brand, right? Huge prestige, massive influence.
Okay, reputation matters, but money talks too, I imagine.
And that's the second, maybe even more crucial point, their endowment. It's enormous, something like $53 billion.
Wow. Billion with a B.
Yeah. That kind of money gives them a level of financial independence that most universities can only dream of. They can, theoretically, absorb a hit like this federal funding cut in a way that would be devastating for institutions without those deep pockets.
So they have the resources to fight back in a way others might not. I remember seeing a funny graphic in one piece, the Harvard seal saying no and no, no.
Ah, yes. It visually captured that defiance pretty well. But it's also worth saying they aren't completely isolated in pushing back.
Right, other universities are involved, supporting them.
Well, maybe not directly joining this lawsuit, but the articles mention other big names. Cornell, Brown, MIT, even Michigan again have joined separate lawsuits.
Yeah.
These challenge broader cuts the administration is making to the indirect costs of research, things like overhead, facilities costs.
Ah, okay. So there's a wider concern in academia about how research funding is being handled overall.
It certainly seems that way, a shared concern about the potential impact on research funding across the sector.
So circling back to the specific Harvard versus Trump administration fight, what are the potential consequences here? Garber warned of severe and long-lasting ones. What could those actually be?
Well, the most immediate worry for Harvard is clearly the disruption to that critical research we talked about, cancer, infectious diseases, innovation. The impact there could be very real, affecting scientific progress.
Beyond the labs, though, what are the bigger picture implications?
It really raises fundamental questions about academic freedom. How much can the government use funding as a lever to shape what universities prioritize or how they operate internally?
That line between accountability and undue influence.
Exactly. And it touches on the whole relationship between the government and higher education. How should that work, especially when it comes to research that benefits the whole country?
Okay, so let's try and sum this up. We've got Harvard, with its massive resources and brand name, taking a stand. They're directly challenging the Trump administration over this huge funding freeze.
A freeze that the administration linked to concerns about anti-Semitism, but which Harvard argues is an overreach that improperly targets vital research.
And this has escalated into a major legal fight, highlighting this tension between government influence and university autonomy.
Precisely. And it forces us to ask, what is the right balance? How do you address real concerns like anti-Semitism without stifling academic freedom or derailing essential research? It's a tough question.
It really is. It leaves you wondering, what's the long-term fallout going to be? Not just for Harvard, but for, well, all of higher education. And especially, what does it mean for schools that don't have a $53 billion cushion to fall back on? Something to definitely keep an eye on. Thanks for diving into this with me.
Absolutely. It's a complex situation with potentially huge ramifications. Glad we could unpack some of it.
Sound the alarm. I'm coming up. We'll have a ball. I'm sweet like a buttercup. You're a Barbie doll. Show them all what I'm made of. Strut down the hall. Won't stop till I get enough.